Thank you, Adam, and welcome everyone. So today we will be reviewing important information with you regarding New York State's landmark paid family leave. In this session, we will share a brief refresher on the program and its uses, as well as share important updates for 2023, along with resources for you to share and communicate with your employees. As employers and HR professionals, you play a critical role in the paid family leave process and in helping employees navigate this important benefit. In today's presentation, we will again provide a brief refresher. We will share important updates, review key responsibilities, go over some similarities and differences between paid family leave and FMLA, discuss New York State's COVID-19 quarantine leave, and then again highlight those resources that are available to you. Starting with a brief review, in April of 2016, New York paid family leave was signed into law. It is employee-funded insurance that helps employees be there for their family when they're most needed. Because of paid family leave, workers across New York no longer have to choose between caring for their loved ones and their jobs, as we now have employee-paid insurance to help in these critical times. New York State paid family leave provides you with a structure to help your employees care for their families in times of need. Paid leave has been shown to increase workplace morale and employee retention. Fully funded by employee payroll contributions, New York State paid family leave provides job-protected, paid time off to employees who need time away from work to bond with a newly born, adopted, or fostered child, care for a family member with a serious health condition, or assist loved ones when when a family member is deployed abroad on active military service. Under legislation signed into law in March of 2020, paid family leave also provides paid time off and job protection so employees can care for themselves or their minor dependent child when under a mandatory order of quarantine or isolation due to COVID-19. And we will go into more detail on these uses later on in the presentation, as they are a bit different from the others. In addition to paid time off, New York paid family leave also has very strong employee protections. Employees are guaranteed to return to the same or a comparable job after taking paid family leave. A comparable job is defined as a position with comparable employment benefits, pay, and other terms and conditions of employment. Employees are guaranteed continuation of health insurance on the same terms as if they had continued to work while out on paid family leave. If employees do contribute to the cost of their health insurance, they must continue paying their portion of the premium while on leave. Employees are also guaranteed protection from discrimination and retaliation, so requesting or taking paid family leave cannot be held against them. As an employer or HR professional, it might be helpful for you to know the kinds of questions employees are asking, which could help direct the guidance you provide and the materials you make available. These are the top questions to the PFL helpline from employees, and we will cover the answers to all of these throughout today's presentation. First, let's walk through a quick review of the three basic uses of paid family leave. Starting with bonding with a child. Paid family leave provides both parents time to bond with the new child within the first 12 months of the birth, adoption, or foster care placement of the child. Parents who work for different employers can take paid family leave at the same time to bond with the same child. Parents who work for the same employer can take it at the same time unless their employer prohibits it, and then in that case, they can take leave separately over the first 12 months following the child's birth, adoption, or foster care placement. It is important to note that expectant parents cannot take paid family leave for their own pregnancy. They can take it once the baby is born because paid family leave is used to bond and care for that baby. A parent may be able to take paid family leave before the actual adoption or placement of a child if an absence from work is required for the adoption or placement to be finalized. Paid family leave is also available for employees to care for a spouse, domestic partner, child, or stepchild sibling, parent or step-parent, parent-in-law, grandparent, or grandchild who has a serious health condition. You might have noticed that I said sibling. New in 2023, siblings are included in family members who are covered by paid family leave. Check with your paid family leave insurance carrier for details on when this will go into effect for your policy so that you can communicate that to your employees. Often the effective date will be tied to your policy renewal, which may not be January 1st, so it is important to know and communicate to your employees when they will be able to take paid family leave to care for a sibling with a serious health condition. A few other important notes for family care. Domestic partner is defined very broadly under the paid family leave law, so it includes people who are not related by blood in a manner that would bar marriage in New York State and who are dependent on one another for support. So for example, an employee may be able to prove that they are in a domestic partnership by showing that they own property together or that they have children in common. A legal relationship is not necessary. And it doesn't matter if these family members live outside of New York State or even outside of the country. Employees can take paid family leave to care for their family member as long as they are within close and continuing proximity. So in other words, present at the same location as the family member they're caring for during the majority of the paid family leave period. And caring for a family member might include necessary physical care, emotional support, visitation, assistance in treatment, transportation, arranging for a change in care, assistance with essential daily living matters, and personal attendant services. In order to take this type of leave, the employee's family member must have a serious health condition. A serious health condition is defined as an illness, injury, or condition that requires either inpatient care in a hospital, hospice, or residential healthcare facility, or continuing treatment or supervision by a healthcare provider. A COVID-19 diagnosis may qualify as a serious health condition. The third type of leave is for assisting during a military deployment. Paid family leave benefits are available when a family member is deployed abroad on active military service or who has been notified of an impending call or order of active service abroad and assistance is needed. Reasons for paid family leave for an active service deployment are the same as the military provisions of the Federal Family Medical Leave Act, or FMLA. They cover the employee's spouse, domestic partner, child, or parent. And you can see on the screen a number of instances where paid family leave will help. And then as mentioned previously, there are also 2 uses of paid family leave related to COVID-19, and we will go over those in a few minutes. Before we do that, let's just take a look at the program updates for 2023. Eligible employees are able to take up to 12 weeks of paid family leave at 67% of their average weekly wage, capped at 67% of the New York State average weekly wage. An employee's average weekly wage is based on their last 8 weeks of pay prior to taking paid family leave. For 2023, the New York State average weekly wage is $1,688.19, and that means that the maximum weekly benefit for 2023 is $1,131.08. This is $62.72 more than the maximum weekly benefit for 2022. Something to keep in mind is that employees can take this paid time off all at once, or they can also take it intermittently, but it must always be taken in full day increments. As I mentioned before, paid family leave is fully funded through employee contributions. The contribution rate is reviewed annually and is subject to change by the New York State Department of Financial Services. In 2023, the payroll contribution is 0.455% of an employee's gross wages each pay period. The maximum annual contribution is $399.43. This is $24.28 less than in 2022. Employees who earn less than the current New York State average weekly wage of $1,688.19 will contribute less than the annual cap of $399.43, consistent with what their actual wages are. To estimate deductions, you or your employees can use the 2023 payroll deduction calculator that is available on the Paid Family Leave website. So just to summarize those updates for 2023, the maximum weekly benefit is increasing from $1,068.36 to $1,131.08. And as of January 1st, 2023, employers may deduct at the rate of 0.455% of an employee's gross wages each pay period, capped at an annual maximum of $399.43. Now that we have covered the types of leave, the benefits, and the costs, we will review who is eligible to take paid family leave. Most private employers with one or more employees are required to have paid family leave insurance for their employees. Public employers may opt into the program. Employees of public employers who are represented by a union may be covered if paid family leave is collectively bargained. For covered employees, eligibility for taking paid family leave depends on meeting specific requirements for the amount of time employees have worked for their employer. So full-time employees, meaning those who regularly work 20 or more hours per week, are eligible for paid family leave after 26 consecutive weeks of employment with the same employer. Part-time employees who work a regular schedule of less than 20 hours per week are eligible after working 175 days, which do not need to be consecutive. Citizenship or immigration status is not a factor in employee eligibility. In 2021, Governor Hochul signed an amendment to the workers' compensation law, which expands coverage for domestic workers. Previously, domestic workers were only required to be covered if they worked at least 40 hours per week for their employer. As of January 1st, 2022, domestic workers who are hired directly by a private homeowner and who work 20 or more hours per week for the private homeowner are required to be covered for paid family leave. These workers are eligible once they've been in employment with that employer for 26 consecutive weeks. Paid family leave coverage is not optional for eligible employees. Employees can waive coverage if they regularly work fewer than 20 hours per week and will not work 175 days in a year, or if they regularly work 20 or more hours per week but will not be in employment with that employer for 26 consecutive weeks. So seasonal workers are a great example of this, as they may work full-time but only for 3 months out of the year. If an employee meets the criteria for waiving coverage, the employer must provide them with a waiver form, which is also available at paidfamilyleave.ny.gov. Employees who properly file a waiver will not make contributions and will not be eligible for paid family leave benefits. Employers should keep a copy of an employee's waiver on file. If an employee's schedule changes, such that they no longer qualify for a waiver, then their waiver will be automatically revoked within 8 weeks of that schedule change. And also keep in mind that an employee can voluntarily revoke a waiver at any time. If for whatever reason an employee's waiver is revoked, then their employer will begin taking paid family leave contributions and also collect any retroactive amounts that are due. Keep in mind, however, that any amounts collected in excess of the paid family leave premium charged by your carrier must be promptly returned to employees. Now let's review how employees request paid family leave and the employer's role in the process. So here's how the paid family leave request process works. Before applying, the employee must notify the employer at least 30 days before their leave will start if it's foreseeable. Otherwise, they must notify their employer as soon as possible. Next, the employee will obtain the request form package for the type of leave they need to take and complete the request for paid family leave, or Form PFL1, following the instructions on the cover sheet. They'll make a copy for the records and submit it to their employer. The employer must fill out their section of the form and return it to the employee within 3 business days. This information includes items such as the employer's address, SEN, employee's date of hire, and last 8 weeks of wages. If the employer does not complete their portion of the form, the employee can still submit the form and cannot be denied solely based on the employer not filling in their portion. Employees will submit Form PFL-1, the other request forms specific to the leave they are taking, and any supporting documentation directly to the employer's paid family leave insurance carrier. They can submit their request before or within 30 days after the start of their leave before they risk losing benefits. In most cases, the insurance carrier must pay or deny benefits within 18 days of receiving the completed request package or the employee's first day of leave, whichever is later. Employees can get paid family leave request forms from their employer's insurance carrier, or directly from paidfamilyleave.ny.gov/forms. If for some reason an employee's paid family leave request is denied, or they have another claim-related dispute, such as the amount of benefits or the timeliness of an insurer's decision, they may request to have the decision reviewed by a neutral arbitrator. The insurer or employer, if they are an approved self-insured employer, will notify the employee of the reason for denial and provide them with information about requesting arbitration. Arbitration for paid family leave is handled by NAM, National Arbitration and Mediation, and more information on arbitration is available at NAM's website. As mentioned earlier, an employer may not discriminate against an employee for requesting or taking paid family leave, and an employee is guaranteed job protection with the same or a comparable job upon return from paid family leave. If an employer does not return an employee to the same or a comparable job, terminates the employee, reduces the employee's pay and/or benefits, or disciplines the employee in any way as a result of the employee requesting or taking paid family leave, the employee can file a discrimination claim with the Workers' Compensation Board. An administrative law judge may order an employer to reinstate an employee, pay any lost wages, pay attorney's fees, and pay up to $500 in penalties. The full process and all of the forms are available at paidfamilyleave.ny.gov, or employees can also call the Paid Family Leave Helpline for assistance, and that number is 844-337-6303. Paid family leave was designed to be easy for employers to implement, so now I will walk through a checklist of employer responsibilities. Most private employers in New York State must have paid family leave insurance. So the first thing to do is ensure that coverage is in place. Generally, if employers are required to carry disability insurance, they are also required to carry paid family leave. This insurance is typically added to the existing disability insurance policy. Employers who are self-insured for disability must purchase a separate paid family leave policy or apply to the Workers' Compensation Board to self-insure. For a list of all of the insurers who are offering paid family leave policies, you can visit the paid family leave section of the Department of Financial Services website at dfs.ny.gov/PFL. Next thing is to make sure that you are informing your employees. So employee handbooks or other written guidance to employees must be updated to include information on paid family leave. To make this as easy as possible for employers, we have posted model language on the employer section of the Paid Family Leave website. Employers can customize this or just fill in a few blanks and print it as is. Employers need to make sure they are collecting the payroll contributions. So you can withhold at the 2022 contribution rate until January 1st, 2023, and then at that time you'll switch over to withholding at the new rate. Make sure that you are identifying any employees who qualify for a waiver form. As a reminder, these are employees who work fewer than 20 hours per week and will not work 175 days in a year, or those who work 20 or more hours per week but will not be in employment for 26 consecutive weeks. If an employee meets the criteria for waiving coverage, you must provide them with a waiver form. As shared earlier, if an employee waives coverage, they will not make contributions and will not be eligible for benefits. Make sure you are keeping a copy of any waiver forms on file. Insurance carriers will also provide employers with a Notice of Compliance, or Form PSL 120, also known as a Notice to Employees. This will state that the employer has paid family leave insurance, and it also provides employees with key information about the benefit. Self-insured employers can get this notice by contacting the Workers' Compensation Board by emailing certificates@wcb.ny.gov. Employers must post and maintain this notice in plain view, similar to how the signage for workers' compensation and disability insurance is displayed. Employers who receive a paid family leave claim must complete the employer section, which will be Part B of that request for paid family leave, or Form PFL1, and make sure you are returning it within 3 business days to the employee. On that form, the employer will be asked to provide the employee's last 8 weeks of gross wages and to calculate the average weekly wage. And employers should also be sure to discuss any specific leave tracking or other processes with their paid family leave insurer. Okay, we are also frequently asked about the similarities and differences between paid family leave and FMLA. So how are they similar? There are several similarities. Both provide for bonding with a child, caring for a family member with a serious health condition, and assisting when a loved one is deployed abroad on active military service. Employees are also guaranteed that they'll return to the same or a comparable position, and their health insurance shall continue on the same terms as if the employee had continued to work. If employees contribute to the cost of their health insurance, they must continue to pay their portion of the premium cost while on leave. But there are a number of key differences. A big one is that New York's paid family leave is paid, whereas FMLA is not paid. All private employers will carry paid family leave insurance. FMLA is not an insurance product, and it does also have a 50 employee threshold for eligibility. The length of time that an employee must work is different. So as a review for paid family leave, an employee who works 20 or more hours per week must be in employment for 26 consecutive weeks, and an employee who works fewer than 20 hours per week must work 175 days for the employer. For FMLA, employees must have worked for a full year and 1,250 hours in the last 52 weeks to qualify. Another big distinction is that typically under New York paid family leave, an employee is taking leave to care for someone else, not for their own serious health condition. Under FMLA, an employee can take leave for their own serious health condition. Paid family leave can only be taken in full day increments, whereas FMLA may be taken hourly. And then also under paid family leave, employees do not need to use other paid time off before they take paid family leave. So as I hinted at earlier, there are 2 additional uses of paid family leave that took effect under emergency legislation enacted in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The legislation allows for a combination of New York paid family leave and disability benefits if an employee is under an order of mandatory or precautionary quarantine or isolation due to COVID-19. Keep in mind that this is the only time employees may receive paid family leave and disability benefits at the same time. The legislation also gives employees access to paid family leave if their minor dependent child is under an order of mandatory or precautionary quarantine or isolation due to COVID-19. So for an employee's own order of quarantine or isolation, the benefits will vary depending on the size of the employer. So if the employer has 100 or more employees, then those employers are required to provide 14 days of paid sick leave, and the benefits that you see on the screen are not applicable to those employers. For other employers who have fewer than 100 employees, employees may be eligible to receive 67% of their pay up to a maximum weekly benefit of $840.70. This is a different maximum benefit than for the other types of paid family leave. Once the employees receive that benefit, disability benefits will then make up the difference in their salary up to a maximum weekly benefit of $2,043.92. So with that disability maximum and the paid family leave maximum, you get a combined total maximum benefit of $2,884.62 per week. There is no waiting period for the benefits, and employees will have job protection throughout the entire quarantine. If an employee requests leave for their minor dependent child's quarantine or isolation, they may be able to receive 67% of their pay, up to a maximum weekly benefit of $840.70. More detailed information about taking paid family leave for a personal quarantine or a child's quarantine can be found at paidfamilyleave.ny.gov/COVID-19. I do strongly encourage you to visit that site. The page includes information about the COVID-19 paid sick leave requirements. We have a ton of frequently asked questions on there. The application forms are there and more. As we continue working closely with employers to ensure successful implementation of paid family leave throughout New York State, there are a number of resources available to help. Complete details on paid family leave are available at paidfamilyleave.ny.gov, along with opt-in, request, and waiver forms, fact sheets, and weekly benefit and payroll deduction calculators. We have also created a special updates for 2023 webpage, which is available at paidfamilyleave.ny.gov/2023, with a number of employer resources to help explain and communicate benefit and deduction changes. These include an overview of the changes, frequently asked questions, an updated employee statement of rights, an updated model language that can be used for an employee handbook or other written materials, and a template to use to notify employees of their payroll deduction amount. We do strongly encourage employers to inform employees of the new deduction amount for 2023. Employers and employees can also contact the Paid Family Leave Helpline at 844-337-6303. This is available for assistance Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And if you are not already subscribed for email updates on paid family leave, you can subscribe by clicking Get Paid Family Leave Updates on the bottom of the paidfamilyleave.ny.gov homepage. Finally, we also want to make you aware of the board's Office of the Advocate for Business. The Office of the Advocate for Business is the liaison between New York's business community and the Workers' Compensation Board, giving employers one place to contact for answers to their workers' compensation questions, as well as any questions employers may have about paid family leave as it relates to your business. And you can contact the Office of the Advocate for Business at advocatebusiness@wcb.ny.gov. Really hope that you have found this presentation helpful, and thank you so much for the opportunity to discuss New York's landmark paid family leave with you. Before we take your questions, I'm just going to turn it back over to Adam.
Thank you, Quinn. And yes, at this time, we will now take your questions. Again, please keep your phone lines muted. If you have a question, enter it in the Q&A panel. We do have some questions that have come in so far. I do want to note we will be providing a recorded version of this presentation as well as a copy of the slide deck on our website and YouTube page. If you go to YouTube and you type in New York State Workers' Compensation Board, you'll see dozens upon dozens of video recordings, including past paid family leave webinars. We will be updating this recording with the new 2023 information. Just make sure you're signed up for email notifications so you're aware when those are ready. To sign up, just visit our website, wcb.ny.gov, scroll to the bottom of the homepage, and select Get W. Oh, I'm sorry. If you want paid family leave updates, go to our paid family leave website, and there's a Get Updates button there, and you can sign up to receive paid family leave news as well. I'm going to head back over to the information page here, so you have the helpline and webpage on your screen. And again, we do have some questions that have already come in, so Quinn and I are going to take a few minutes to look through those, and we will be back with you shortly.
Okay, we are going to jump right into questions. So the first question is, does paid family leave offer job protection when on leave to care for a sibling? FMLA does not apply to siblings, but paid family leave does. The answer is yes. So if an employee is out on paid family leave for any reason, whether they're caring for a sibling or they're bonding, Whatever the reason is that they're on paid family leave, as long as they're on an approved period of paid family leave, their job is protected. Okay, the next question is, will an employee who has not yet, they're full-time, so they work 20 or more hours per week, but they have not yet been employed for 26 consecutive weeks, and they go out on short-term disability, will they be eligible for paid family leave after they take the short-term disability? So any time out on statutory short-term disability is not going to count towards eligibility for paid family leave. So if an employee is out for a week on short-term disability, that week will not count towards their eligibility for paid family leave. The next question is, are per diem or floater employees eligible for paid family leave? So it's certainly possible. If they are working fewer than 20 hours per week, they will need to work those 175 days before becoming eligible. And if they end up working regularly 20 or more hours per week, then they'll have to just be employed for the 26 consecutive weeks to be eligible. The next question is, can you please go through the timeline for submitting forms for maternity leave? So if you're talking about bonding with a newborn child, you will collect all of your documents and submit them to your employer. So you'll be doing the PFL-1 and the PFL-2. So you would complete the PFL-1 Part A, you would give that to your employer, and they would have 3 business days to complete the PFL-1 Part B and give that back to you. Then you would attach your PFL-2 to that form, and you would give it to your employer's paid family leave insurance carrier. Now, some carriers will allow you to give them those forms before your first day of leave, so, before your anticipated due date. But some carriers may not allow you to pre-file your claim, and so they will want those documents once the child is born, and you have 30 days from your first day of leave to get those forms to the paid family leave insurance carrier. The next question is, can an employee use their paid time off for a day to get their full pay? So that is going to be up to the employer, whether or not an employee can do that. Some employers might allow an employee to top up their paid family leave benefit with accruals. Other employers, if an employee wants to use a full day of paid time off during paid family leave, then the employer would pay them their paid time off, and then the employer could seek reimbursement from the paid family leave insurance carrier for the amount of paid family leave benefits the insurance carrier would have paid to the employee during that time. Because keep in mind that an employee cannot receive more than 100% of their wages during a period of paid family leave. Next question is, we offer 2 weeks of paid maternity leave. Can an employee use that first and then use paid family leave? That is totally up to you as an employer and what your maternity leave policy is. Some employers will require employees to use the employer's maternity or paternity leave policy concurrently with paid family leave. Other employers will write their parental leave policies in such a way that allows employees to use the employer's policy first and then use paid family leave. So it's just going to depend on the terms of your employer policy. The next question is on the interaction of paid family leave with FMLA and whether the 2 benefits need to be taken at the same time. So the employer can require that an employee use FMLA and paid family leave at the same time, or the employer can allow the employee to use one benefit and then the other. So it's just going to depend on the employer policies again. Next question is, how does short-term disability come into play for maternity leave? So typically, employees would have 6 to 8 weeks of short-term disability available to them after giving birth, depending on how they deliver. You cannot take short-term disability at the same time as paid family leave. So what employees typically will end up doing is they'll take their short-term disability first for those 6 to 8 weeks after giving birth, and then after that would take their 12 weeks of paid family leave. But it's totally up to the employee how they want to coordinate their benefits. It's just possible if an employee chooses to take paid family leave first after giving birth, they might not be eligible for disability any longer, depending on how much paid family leave they take. So I see a couple of questions about the orders of quarantine and how you obtain an order of quarantine. And I know that the rules on orders of quarantine are always changing. We are trying our best to keep on top of what those new rules are. The best way to find the most up-to-date information is on that COVID website, the paidfamilyleave.ny.gov/COVID-19. There is, in the frequently asked questions section, a specific section about obtaining an order of quarantine or isolation. So I'd recommend checking that page for any updates. And right in there, we have the requirements for the orders and also links to the self-attestation for the order of quarantine and the order of isolation. The next question is also about COVID-19 quarantine leave, specific to those employers with more than 100 employees who are responsible for providing their employees with COVID paid sick leave when they are under an order of quarantine or isolation. And the question is whether these paid sick leave days are in addition to paid time off that the employer already provides, and the answer is yes. So if you are an employer that is required to provide COVID-19 paid sick leave days to your employees who are under an order of quarantine or isolation, those days are in addition to any other sick days or paid time off you might offer your employees. So the next question is about the timing of applying for paid family leave. And if an employee is applying before their first day of leave, and so they don't have the full wage information for the last 8 weeks prior to the first day of paid family leave, what do you do? So something to remember is that not all insurance carriers are going to accept the forms before the first day of leave, because the timeline to submit is 30 days after the first day of leave, not 30 days before the first day of leave. But if your insurance carrier does allow the employee to submit their claim form early, then the insurance carrier will probably just follow up with both the employer and the employee to get the last 8 weeks of wages. Once the employee has started their leave, they'll follow up to get that wage information from both of you. Next question is, who is responsible for confirming relationship for siblings? So when an employee is applying for family care leave, on the request form, they are going to indicate which family member they are taking leave for. The employer is not the one verifying that information. If the insurance carrier, for whatever reason, thinks that they need more information about the employee's relationship to the family member, then the insurance carrier will request more information from the employee. The next question is, can you explain the COVID paid sick leave versus the PFL for COVID-19? It is very complicated, so I do encourage you to go to the website that's on the screen right now, paidfamilyleave.ny.gov/COVID-19, because we do have it all outlined in writing, which might be easier to look at than me saying it. But so the benefits are going to vary depending on the size of the employer. So the smallest size employers are not going to have any COVID paid sick leave that they have to provide. And instead, those employees, if they're eligible, will have the combined paid family leave disability benefits available for their own order of quarantine or isolation. The medium-sized employers, so that's employers with 11 to 99 employees, they have to provide 5 days of COVID-19 paid sick leave. And then after those 5 days, if an employee is still under an order of quarantine or isolation, then the employee might be eligible for the combined paid family leave disability benefits. And then when we get into the big employer size, so that's 100 or more employees, those employers are only offering the 14 days of COVID-19 paid sick leave if the employee is under an order of quarantine for 14 days. And those employees do not have access to the combined disability and paid family leave benefits for their own order of quarantine. Next question is, how does a New York employee take short-term disability? So there is a request form similar to paid family leave. We have the request form available on our Workers' Compensation Board website. There should be a specific section for disability, but the paid family leave insurance carrier should also be the disability insurance carrier. So employees can also just contact that insurance carrier for any forms or with any questions that they have about applying. Next question is, can you discuss retroactive when a request is made for leave taken in the past? So again, keep in mind that the employee does have to apply for paid family leave within 30 days from their first day of leave. So it would be a little bit retroactive, the payments. Once the insurance carrier approves the employee's request for paid family leave, payments will be made retroactive to the first day that they went out on paid family leave. I have another question about the coordination of paid family leave and short-term disability, saying that I understand they can't be taken at the same time, but how do the length of each type of leave overlap? So typically short-term disability, if you're talking about for a pregnancy, the short-term disability benefits might be available like 4 weeks before the anticipated due date, and then 6 to 8 weeks after the due date, and then paid family leave could be used. Really, the only thing to keep in mind with the coordination of the two is that you can't exceed 26 weeks of combined benefits in a year. So if for some reason an employee needed to use 20 weeks of short-term disability in a year, they would only have 6 weeks of paid family leave available to them in that year. But typically for maternity leave, you have the 4 weeks before and then the 6 weeks after for disability, and then the 12 weeks of paid family leave. But keep in mind, it's always up to the employee how they want to use the benefits that are available to them. Next question is, if an employee works for a New York employer, but they live and work remotely outside of New York, can they receive paid family leave? So to be eligible for New York's paid family leave, you do need to work in New York. If you are traveling outside of New York every once in a while for work, that's okay. But if you are living 100% of the time and working 100% of the time from a state that is not New York, then you are not going to be eligible for paid family leave because you're not localized in New York. Next question is, I thought siblings were included in 2023. That's correct. So, we mentioned siblings here because we want employers to be aware that it is coming in 2023, but just a good reminder that employees cannot take leave to care for a sibling until 2023, and also keep in mind that they won't be able to take it until your paid family leave policy renews. So you do need to check with your insurance carrier to see when your policy will renew so that you can let employees know when that will be available to them. So the next question is about eligibility. So this person used to work for their current employer 5 years ago, then they left the company, and now they are working for the employer again. So are they eligible because of their prior time worked? So if you are terminated from your employer and then you are rehired, you would need to regain eligibility with that employer. Okay, so the next question is about the interaction of short-term disability, paid family leave, and FMLA. So the question is, can an employee take up to 18 weeks of leave if they are taking disability for maternity for 6 weeks and then PFL for 12 weeks after, even though FMLA is only 12 weeks total? And the answer is yes. So when we say that an employer can require an employee to use FMLA and paid family leave concurrently, something that's important to note is that it's only any available FMLA time, right? So if an employee is taking 6 weeks of short-term disability and the employer is running FMLA concurrently with those 6 weeks, then after the 6 weeks, there's only 6 weeks of FMLA left. Those 6 weeks of FMLA can run concurrently with the first 6 weeks of paid family leave, and then the employee will still have another 6 weeks of paid family leave available to them. So it is possible that they would be out for a full 18 weeks. Next question is, we hire people on an as-needed basis for trade shows. They do not work a regular schedule. They are just periodically employed throughout the year, and they do not work 175 days in a year. Are they eligible? So that sounds like an employee who you would need to offer a waiver form to. So if they don't regularly, or if they regularly work fewer than 20 hours per week and they won't work 175 days in a year, then you would give them a waiver form when you hire them that they could fill out, and then they would not be eligible and they would not make any contributions to paid family leave. Next question is, what happens if an employer has to replace the employee due to state licensing requirements, keep their business operating, and no longer has space for that employee to return to their company? So if you have an employee out on paid family leave and for whatever reason you have to terminate that employee while they're on leave, that employee may file a discrimination claim with the Workers' Compensation Board if they feel like they were discriminated against for taking paid family leave. If they do that and there is a hearing before a judge, the employer would need to show that the termination of that employee was not due to them taking paid family leave, and that, you know, they didn't have a job for them to return to because of business needs or staffing shortages or things like that. So that's something that you would need to present in defense of a paid family leave discrimination claim. Okay, I have a couple very specific scenario questions about whether an employee is eligible or not. I can't provide legal advice, which would include saying whether or not someone is eligible in a specific scenario. So what I will say is, if you have one of those really specific questions where you feel like maybe an employee isn't eligible or you're not quite sure, contact your paid family leave insurance carrier and describe the situation to them, and they can provide you guidance. But also keep in mind, you know, an employee can always apply for paid family leave if they think that they are eligible, and it'll be up to the carrier to either approve or deny the request. Next question is, if an employee is part-time and not eligible, but later they become eligible, do they only start paying contributions once eligible? So if an employee had filled out a waiver form because they weren't going to work 175 days in a year, and then their schedule changes so that they are no longer qualified for that waiver because they will work 175 days in a year, then the waiver will be revoked and employers can take contributions for the time that the waiver was in place, including moving forward with contributions as well. Next question is about if an employee is out on disability for maternity leave and then there's a change of ownership before they start paid family leave, will they still be eligible for paid family leave? So typically, if an employee was eligible with the employer that was acquired, they will automatically be eligible for paid family leave under the new employer. Next question is there a waiting period for paid family leave? And the answer is no. So for short-term disability, there's a 7-day unpaid waiting period before employees have access to those benefits. There is not a similar waiting period for paid family leave. Next question is, should we wait until we get all of the supporting documentation before we submit the claim form for bonding? So yes, typically you want to submit a completed request package to the paid family leave insurance carrier. If you don't, they are going to let you know that you're missing certain pieces of information, and then you'll have to submit those anyway. And they won't make a decision on your claim until they do receive a completed request. Next question is about the 26 consecutive weeks of employment for employees who work a regular schedule of 20 or more hours per week. Does that mean 26 weeks worked, or is it 26 weeks of employment? So it is 26 consecutive weeks of employment. So if there are weeks during that 6-month period where the employee is away from work but is still considered to be an employee by the employer, those weeks will count towards the 26-week requirement. Just keep in mind, like I said before, any periods of short-term disability will not count towards eligibility. The next question is, how often are the full 12 weeks of paid family leave available? So employees can use up to 12 weeks of paid family leave once every 52-week period. It is a rolling 52-week period, not a calendar 52-week period. So the way that'll work is, if I wanted to use paid family leave today, I would look back on the past 52 weeks from today and see how much had been used, and then that would let me know how much I have available to me today. Is there an expiration date for the COVID paid leave law? And the answer is no. That COVID legislation did not contain an end date. So as of right now, there's no expiration date for those benefits. Okay, so because of time, this is going to be the last question. Thank you all so much for having such great questions. I'm sorry that I can't get to all of them within the allotted time. Adam will give you information about how you can get your questions answered. But the last question is, if an employee wants to change the dates that they listed on their PFL form during the leave, what do they need to do in order to do that? Do they have to complete a full new form? The answer is probably not. If you need to change your dates, one, make sure that you are notifying your employer and giving them sufficient notice of the new date. And then also just call the paid family leave insurance carrier, let them know that you need to change a date. And typically they can just do that for you and they aren't going to have you submit a full new application for those new dates.
All right, thank you, Quinn. Yes, unfortunately, we do have a hard stop at 1 o'clock, so we do apologize for not being able to get through all the questions. Thank you, though, for some great participation today. Again, if we did not answer your question, or if you think of something later today or anytime, please feel free to reach out to that helpline on your screen or the Paid Family Leave website. We will get back to you if you have a question. Hopefully, the information you have can be found on the website. Thank you to Quinn for taking the time to do this presentation today, as always. And I just want to remind you again, we will be providing you with a copy of this slide deck as well as a recorded version on our YouTube page and website. Just make sure you're signed up for email notifications so you are aware when those are available. If you want more paid family leave news, including information on future webinars, again, sign up for our email address. You can go to the Paid Family Leave website, scroll down to the bottom of the homepage and select Get Updates. And I do want to let you know that we also distribute information via social media. So along with YouTube, make sure you check out our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages. We'll appreciate the follow. And again, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for some great questions, some great participation. Thank you to Quinn. And everybody stay safe and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.